you boys and girls, London calling.
5.5 is on the vertex of a parabola. And as you can imagine, a vertex is a very useful thing to know. If you're graphing a parabola, that's probably the most important point on the whole parabola. And also, I hate to tell you, but next section, we're going to start doing word problems. And when you're solving word problems to do with quadratic equations, it's often the vertex, which is the point you're interested in. Why? Because that's the maximum amount or the minimum amount. But we'll talk about that next day. Anyway, we like to know the vertex. So if we had an equation of a parabola that looked like this, would this be difficult or easy to figure out the parabola? That'd be very easy. How come? Because it's in standard form. And in standard form, all you do is take the opposite of this number, so 3, and this number, 5. There's our vertex. Great. What if it was in this form? Easy or difficult? Well, as of right now, this would be very difficult. This is in general form. Okay, right now we don't know how to find the vertex. What we'd have to do is complete the square like we did last class. And once we complete the square, in other words, switched it into standard form, the form over here, then we'd be able to figure out the vertex. But wouldn't it be nice if we could just look at this general form and not do any completing the square, because that takes a long time, and just find the vertex? Well, maybe there's a way to do that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start by writing down general form. General form looks like this. Y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, right? That's the form this is in right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to do completing the square to this. And we're going to see what we end up with once we can change this form into standard form. It's going to be a little bit difficult. If you don't understand, it's not the biggest thing in the world, but I think it's great if you do understand. So, hey, why don't you try it yourself? That'd be awesome. We'll probably actually try this in class, but I'll fairly quickly do it right now. So the first thing we do when we complete the square is we move the constant to the other side. Here's the constant, this plus c. So that's going to move to the other side and become minus c. Alright, step 1 is done. The next step is you need to factor out the a value here if it's not 1. Well, we don't know if it's 1 or not, so we better factor it out. So what we have is y minus c equals a, we factor that out. And what we're left with is x squared, because a times x squared is ax squared. And this is a little bit tricky. What are you left with right here? Well, what you're left with is b over a, and then that x. Because a times b over a, well, you cancel out the a's, you just be left with bx, and that's exactly what we want. Alright, so hopefully that makes sense. Next step, you're going to find the magic number. And to get the magic number, what you do is you take this coefficient right here, this b over a, you divide it by 2, and then you square it. Okay, when you divide by 2, let's make this 2 over 1. It's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal, right? b over a times 1 over 2, and then we'll square it. And if we multiply that, you get b over 2a, and then we'll square it. And when you square a fraction, you square the top, b squared, and you square the bottom. And when you square the bottom, remember we're spreading the love here to everything. So it's 4a squared. So that's how much we have to add to the right hand side. So we have a x squared plus b over ax plus, this is the magic number, b squared over 4a squared. Told you this wasn't easy. Alright, on the left hand side we have to add the same amount. But remember, we're not actually going to add this amount right here. Why not? Because this amount is actually being multiplied by a. So what we need to do is we need to take this, the magic number, and multiply it by a, and that'll tell us how much to put on the left hand side. Well, when we multiply this by a, this a will cancel out one of the a's on the bottom. So what we're left with is b squared over 4a. That's what we have to add on this side. Alright, next thing to do is to factor the right hand side. So it should end up being something squared. Well, obviously it's going to be x times x to get x squared. And how do you get this other term over here? It's going to be plus, because it's all pluses here. You can either take the square root of this. Well, the square root of b squared is b, and the square root of 4a squared is 2a. Or you could have taken half of b over a, and half of b over a is b over 2a, so it worked. Alright, and then on this side we still have our y minus c plus b squared over 4a. And then the last thing to do is to move the constant over to the other side. All of this is your constant. You got to move all that over. So what you'd be left with is y equals a x plus b over 2a squared, that's a b and then you're going to bring the c over, so you'd have plus c, and then minus b squared over 4a. Okay, why do we do all this? Because once this is now in standard form, and once parabola is in standard form, we can get the vertex very, very quickly. So let's write down what the vertex would be. The vertex would be the opposite of this value right here. So instead of being positive b over 2a, it would be negative b over 2a, and then you would have, for your y value, it would be this whole constant, just like it looks there. So c minus b squared over 4a. Okay, that's what the vertex would be. I guess I wrote it here. The graph of y equals ax squared plus bx plus c is a parabola with a vertex at the point negative b over 2a. And why don't we switch the second one so it has a common denominator? So this is c over 1. I could multiply top and bottom by 4a, so I'd get 4ac minus b squared all over 4a. You can write it like this if you want, or you can write it like this. I think it might be a little bit simpler. Okay, now that's pretty complicated, but what I really want you to focus on here, because this is the really useful bit right there, is that. That's not too hard to memorize. You will have to memorize this if you want to use it. I find that most kids do like this, so you probably want to memorize this. And this will give you the x value of the vertex. This other part here I'm not going to highlight. This is hard to memorize, and you actually don't need it. I'm going to show you why you don't actually need it. You can use it if you want, but you don't need to. So let's show you why this is so useful. So it says, find the vertex for y equals 2x squared plus 4x minus 5. This is not in standard form. I can't tell the vertex right away. So I could complete the square, but that takes a lot of time. But what I could now do is I could find the x value of the vertex. So I'm going to write down x value of vertex. You don't need to write this down, but just so you're clear what I'm talking about, that's what I'm finding right now. The x value of the vertex equals negative b over 2a. So all I have to do is figure out what's a and b and c in this question. Well, the a value is 2, the b value is 4, and the c value is negative 5. Again, you don't need to write that down, but I'll just do it so you understand what I'm doing here. Alright, let's fill it in. Negative, b is 4, so negative 4 over 2 times a, and a is 2. So I get negative 4 over 2 times 2 is 4, which means I get negative 1. Okay, there you go. I know in my vertex that the x value is negative 1. I do not need to complete the square or anything. I know that already. Okay, to get the y value, there's two ways you could get the y value. The one way, which I don't really like, is you could use this, 4ac minus b squared over 4a. So let's try it. I just plug in the same numbers. So 4 times a is 2, c is negative 5, minus b is 4, and we're going to square that all over 4 times a, which is 2. Okay, so that equals 4 times 2 is 8, times negative 5 is negative 40, minus 4 squared is 16, all over 8. So that equals negative 40 take away 16 is negative 56 over 8, so it equals negative 7. There you go. The vertex is equal to negative 1, negative 7. I'm finished. Now, the only problem with that is you have to memorize these. And as I said, I don't think negative b over 2a is too hard to memorize. I think you should try to memorize it. It'll make it a lot faster than completing the square. But you don't need to memorize the second one. Here's why. Once you've found this amount right here, this x value of the vertex, how could you use that value to figure out what the y value is of the vertex? Well, what you could do is you could take this x value and you could plug it in to the x's. And once you've plugged it into the x's here, it'll give you a y amount. That'll be the y amount of the vertex. Let's show you that this is actually true. Y equals, so all I'm doing now is rewriting this equation up here, but where it says x, I'm going to write negative 1. So I get 2, and then negative 1 squared, plus 4 times negative 1, take away 5. So y equals negative 1 squared, make sure you do that first. Negative 1 squared is 1, times 2 is 2. Take away 4, because 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. Take away another 5. Y equals 2 take away 4 is negative 2, take away another 5 is negative 7. It worked. We got exactly the same answer as we did over here. So I don't know, you can memorize this rather complicated little formula here, or you can just remember the first one, the negative b over 2a, and then once you get that x value, just plug it into the equation and you'll get the y value. That's the way I like to do it. Okay, one more question and we are done. So we're going to graph this function. Boy, that looks really complicated. One way you could do it is you could complete the square, but let's see if we can use our new expertise to figure this out a little faster. The x value of the vertex is equal to, do you remember what it is? Negative b over 2a. So, again, you don't need to write down what a equals, b equals, c equals. You can just plug them in, but just to make sure you're clear, a value is 1/2. B value, negative 3. C value, 5 over 2. So if we're going to do negative b, that's negative 3. Be very careful about that. Two negatives. Negative 3 over 2 times a, which is 1/2. Okay, negative 3 is positive 3, and 2 times 1/2 is just 1. So you get 3 over 1, or 3. The x value is 3. Right, let's get the y value. Now you could use that, I can't even remember it, what is it, 4ac minus, I have no idea actually, because I never use it. What I do is I plug this 3 into both of these x's here. So I get 1/2, then I have 3 squared, minus 3 times 3, plus 5 over 2. Okay, so I have to do 3 squared first. 3 squared is 9 times 1/2 equals 4.5, or you could use fractions. I think decimals work out pretty nice here actually. So 9 times 1/2 is 4.5, minus 9, 3 times 3 is 9, plus, let's change this into a decimal, 5 over 2 is the same as 2.5. 4.5 take away 9 is negative 4.5, plus 2.5 is negative 2. There you go, there's the y value, negative 2. So my vertex is 3, negative 2. Alright, remember we're graphing this, so that's a great point to know. The vertex is 3, negative 2. 1, 2, 3, negative 2, 1, 2. Alright, does it face up or down? Well, how do you know? You look at the a value, just like in standard form. Remember in standard form there was an a value? Well, the a value in general form is exactly the same. It tells you the same information. So because this is positive, you know this is going to face up. And because it's between 0 and 1, you know this is going to be a wide parabola. So if you know how to use step pattern, you can use step pattern. It's 1/2. The a value is 1/2. So instead of going over 1 and up 1, you'll go over 1 and up 1/2. And then instead of going over 1 and up 3, you'll go up 1.5. And instead of going over 1 and up 5, you'll go over 2.5. I'm just multiplying all those numbers by 1/2, right? Instead of going up 7, I'll go up 3.5. 1/2, 1, 2, 3. And instead of going up 9, I'll go 4.5. It'll be just a little bit off the grid. And then by symmetry, I could do this. And you will have your answer. You're done. I imagine that quite a few of you do not want to use step pattern on this, and that's fine. I can quickly show you what you would do in that case. So since our vertex is at 3, negative 2, once you've graphed your vertex, you would probably make a little table of values, and you'd pick some values close to 3. Like maybe 2 and 1 and 0. And actually 0 is a good one. I want to show you that one. So if we plug 2 into all these x's here, I'd get 1/2 and then 2 squared minus 3 times 2 plus 5 over 2, which is 2.5. I'm going to put 2.5 equals. Okay, 2 squared is 4 and half of 4 is 2. Take away 3 times 2 is 6 plus 2.5. 2 take away 6 is negative 4, plus 2.5 is negative 1.5. So we should have a point at 2 and negative 1.5. And we do. There it is right there. So that worked. If you put 1 in there, you get the same sort of thing. I don't know. Do we need to do this? Put 1 in there. 1 squared is still 1. Times 1/2 is just 1/2, 0.5. 3 times 1 is just 3, so minus 3. And then plus 2.5. So 0.5 take away 3 is negative 2.5, plus 2.5 is 0. So there should be a point at 1, 0, and there is. This point here, the 0, remember sometimes I told you that it's useful to find the y-intercepts or x-intercepts. So to get the y-intercept in general form, in this form, you, just the same as in standard form, you put 0 into the x's. Well, if it's in general form, and you put 0 into the x's, what's the only thing that's going to be left? this number right here, the c value. So you're going to be left with 2.5 as your y value, and that's your y-intercept at 2.5. Exactly. So the important thing that I want you to see here is in general form. So again, if you don't know what it is, I'll write it. Y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. The y-intercept is always at c. Does that make sense? Why? If to find the y-intercept, you put 0 into the x's. If I put a 0 here, this first term's all 0. If I put 0 here, this second term's all 0. And what I'll be left with is c. So in general form, the y-intercept is always at c. That's useful to know. Okay, that's the end of this video. So your main thing you want to memorize for today is negative b over 2a. Good luck with that.
The ice is coming, the sun's zooming in, meltdown expected, the wheat is going thin, engines stop running, but I have no fear, 'cause London is drowning out.